The last thing I ever expected to hear after kissing my dying wife goodbye was laughter. I had just walked out of her hospital room believing I had only days left with the woman I had loved for 11 years. The doctors said her stage 4 pancreatic cancer was getting worse and there was nothing more they could do. I was crying so hard that I could barely see the hallway, when 2 nurses started whispering near the supply closet. Then one of them laughed and said something that stopped me cold. "She is really going through with it." I stood against the wall, completely frozen. The other nurse immediately warned her to be quiet, but then I heard 3 words that changed my entire life. The second biopsy. I had no idea what they were talking about. My wife was dying. Why would there be another biopsy? And what did they mean by going through with it? My name is Ethan Carter. I was 44 and owned an electrical contracting company in Sacramento. Lauren and I had been married for 11 years. We had built our life from nothing, bought a house, grown my business, and survived every ordinary problem together. Trusted her completely. That trust began 3 months earlier when Lauren sat across from me at our kitchen table and told me she had cancer, stage 4. I remember the exact moment. My hands went numb. I dropped the invoice I was holding and knelt beside her. She cried against my shoulder, and I promised her I would stay until the very end, and I kept that promise. I drove her to appointments, sat beside her during treatments, slept in hospital chairs, and listened while her oncologist, Dr. Marcus Reed, explained how quickly the disease was progressing. But after hearing those nurses, I started remembering things I had ignored. Lauren had suddenly become interested in our life insurance policy. She asked who the beneficiary was and whether anything had changed since we got married. She also seemed strangely comfortable whenever Dr. Reed was around. At the time, I thought she was preparing for death. Now I wondered if she was preparing for something else. That night, I called my best friend Ryan. When I told him what I heard, he stayed silent for several seconds. Then he said, "Ethan, if your wife is not dying, you are not dealing with a marriage problem. You are dealing with a crime." The next morning I hired a private investigator named Cole Bennett, a former police officer. I gave him every detail. His advice was simple: do not confront her yet. So I went back to the hospital and continued pretending to be the devastated husband. I brought Lauren flowers. I held her hand. I kissed her forehead. I listened while Dr. Reed explained that she was getting weaker, but now I watched them instead of believing them. A few days later, Cole called. The first biopsy had never confirmed terminal cancer. The result had been inconclusive and possibly benign. A second biopsy had been ordered under another requisition number, but that result had mysteriously disappeared from Lauren's medical file. Then Cole found something worse. Someone had changed the beneficiary structure of my life insurance policy shortly after Lauren's diagnosis. A large portion of the money was being redirected through a trust controlled by Lauren's sister. Madison. I felt sick. Then Madison contacted Cole. She was terrified. Lauren had told her the trust was simply part of estate planning. Madison genuinely believed her sister was dying. But when Cole showed her the evidence, she realized she had been manipulated too. And Madison finally told us everything. Lauren was planning to fake her death. She and Dr. Reed had been preparing false medical records and a fraudulent death certificate. Once the insurance company paid, Lauren planned to disappear with Reed and start a new life in Oregon. Suddenly, every strange detail made sense. She was not preparing to die. She was preparing to disappear. My attorney told me not to confront her. If we exposed the plan too early, they could change everything, destroy evidence, and disappear before we could stop them. So I waited. Those weeks were torture. I continued visiting Lauren. I held her hand while she told me how lucky she was to have a husband like me. Sometimes she cried. Sometimes I almost did too. The hardest part was knowing that I still loved the woman I thought she was, but I also knew that if I acted too soon, she might get away with everything. Then Cole discovered the final piece. A preliminary death certificate had already been filed. It listed pancreatic cancer as the cause of death. There was only one problem: Lauren was still alive. That was the moment we moved. My attorney contacted the authorities and provided everything we had collected. The medical records, the insurance documents, Madison's sworn statement, the evidence connecting Lauren and Dr. Reed. Then we went to the private hospice facility where Lauren was staying. I walked into her room with my attorney, Cole, an investigator, and Madison. Lauren was sitting comfortably on the bed reading a magazine. No IV, no monitors, no signs of a woman who was supposed to be dying. She looked up and froze. I stared at her. Then I said, "You look pretty healthy for someone who is supposed to be dead." Her face went completely white. A few seconds later, Dr. Reed walked into the room. The moment he saw us, he stopped. My attorney stepped forward and told him the authorities were investigating the fraudulent death certificate he had signed. He tried to explain. Lauren tried to deny everything. Then Madison stepped forward. "You lied to me." Lauren stared at her sister. Madison continued, "You told me the trust was legitimate. You told me you were really sick. You never told me there was no cancer." Lauren finally broke. She admitted the plan but tried to justify it. She said she felt trapped in our marriage and wanted a new life. She claimed she planned to explain everything after the insurance money arrived. I stared at the woman I had once planned to grow old with. And suddenly, I understood what hurt the most. I would have given her a divorce. I would have let her walk away. I would have given her a fair share of everything we built together. Instead, she chose to make me believe I was watching her die while she planned to steal my money and disappear with another man. I looked directly into her eyes. "You did not just leave me, Lauren. You made me mourn you while you were still standing in front of me." For the first time, she had nothing to say. Dr. Reed was taken away for questioning, and the medical board opened an investigation into his conduct. Lauren eventually pleaded guilty to insurance fraud and conspiracy. She avoided prison through a legal deal, but received probation, a felony record, and lost every claim to the insurance money. Our marriage was over. I sold the house and rebuilt my life. I threw myself into my business and slowly started trusting people again. But even after everything was finished, I kept thinking about that hospital hallway. Those two nurses had no idea what their careless conversation had exposed. If they had never whispered that day, I might have buried my wife, collected the insurance money, and spent the rest of my life believing I had lost the woman I loved. Instead, I heard the truth before it was too late. Lauren thought she was planning her escape. She thought she was writing the final chapter of my life. But she made one mistake. She underestimated how far a man will go when he has nothing left to lose. I did not destroy her. I simply let the truth destroy the life she had built on lies. And today, when I think about that final goodbye, I no longer remember it as the day I lost my wife. I remember it as the day I finally discovered who she really was. She thought she was disappearing from my life. Instead, she disappeared from it forever. And for the first time in 11 years, I woke up every morning knowing one thing for certain. Whatever happened next, it would finally be my life.